Hello, this is Mary Buckham, and this is our 5th day of Secrets of Writing Sexual Tension Challenge. We'll be starting in just a moment or two as people get into the classroom or get into the lecture here. I'm going to keep the lecture kind of short so that there's enough time in the rest of the day for me to try and make sure I catch up as many of the postings as possible. So waiting for people to start showing up. Yay! There we have Paulette and Facebook user. That sounds so impersonal, and I apologize. This is also an opportunity for those who are here live, if they have last minute questions, etc. I tried to catch up on all the questions this morning, but I will look at them again. There's Leslie, yay! And Facebook user who finally gets to be here for a live lecture. Yep, we're not going to leave without you. And we have Beverly from Toronto. Oh, it's Sarah Lynn. I have no idea why they make it hoop jumping. And the other Mary in Olympia. And Hillary from Savannah, New Jersey, and Lou from North Carolina, and BA from Arizona. Yay, we have someone checking in from the UK. I don't have a name, so I can't welcome you directly by name, but I see you. And then someone from Spring, just north of Houston, which hopefully that heat wave has broken too. And we've got Ohio, we have Austin, and Jennifer. Sorry, no idea why some names will not show up. We have Mike from Easton, Maryland, that will be underwater in 150 years, if not sooner. Janet made it, yes. Texas, we have lots of Texas folks. Georgia, Gayla, nice to see you. Gayla, I'll be giving a talk to the Georgia romance writers sometime next year, I think, online. Annie from France. I'm glad you learned a lot. I want you to keep writing because you have an amazing voice. And Jan, from just south of me. No, I can't see your name now for the Facebook user who tried it again. So before we actually get into what today's lecture is about, I wanted to point out something that I was noticing in yesterday's homework, which was the kiss, is that it's very obvious when a writer feels uncomfortable writing a kiss. And so what happens is, as the writer, we have a tendency to step back and remove ourselves. And so we start watching the couple as opposed to being in the skin of the point of view character. And when that happens, it creates a distance between the reader and what's happening. And you see it when someone is writing and they're moving hand to here or lips to there, but the point of view character isn't experiencing it in their body. And so very common, and writing an early draft with that type of approach just lets you know this is where coming back in and adding a little more emotional response from the point of view character instead of quite so much this goes here and that went there and this was touched here and that was touched there. So it's very important to just be aware that it's not unusual when we are writing anything uncomfortable, any emotional scene that is uncomfortable, the death of someone can be uncomfortable. It could be any type of an argument somebody has. What happens is the writer tends to pull back and just watch the people move around. Laura is having blurry video. I have no idea why that's happening, Laura. If other people are having it, let me know, and I might be able to do this some other way. But again, Ginger can't see me. No, you're not seeing me because what we're doing today, Ginger, is mostly text. And I wanted to make sure that I did not go out and come back in and muck up the tech part. So if the video is clear to others, Laura, maybe what you want to, I hate to even recommend it, but sign out again and come back in. So we're just going to be looking at the screen today so that I can make sure that everybody can see it. I did want to bring that point up. I will be responding to as many. I think I've got halfway through yesterday's homework assignment. I will get through the rest of them that I can today. And it is going to then be, I'll go back to as many things as I can. Cindy, yes, the slide just says day 5. Anne says, I would like to join your plotting workshop. Is there any way the price might be reduced by 20%, which would have been the case had I known it in July, but then I did not know you at all. Let me know. I will let you know, but yes, there is another challenge. When you join that challenge, you get that 20% reduction. So we'll just assume that you were in that 20% reduction and we can get that for you, Anne. It'll be lovely to plot with you then. This is for commercial fiction only. It is not romance. There's a romance plotting. I'll probably have it next spring. But the one coming up in October is for general commercial fiction. So if you're writing a mystery, if you're writing a young adult, if you're writing anything that is not a romance, but it has a ending that the character has changed or kind of a high five moment there at the ending of the story, it's probably commercial fiction. So let me go ahead and get started here. And this is based on a couple of years ago when I was teaching a sexual tension workshop online. It was a month long and lots of back and forth. But one of the things that I did in that sexual tension workshop was interview a number of authors that wrote good sexual tension. So I wanted to share with you some of that information that I garnered there so that you hear it from not just me saying these things. And we all have this opportunity to learn from the best simply by reading their books. Now, these insights are from romance authors, because at the time it was just for romance writers that I was teaching this course. But the concepts are still valid. But and I thought it was the funnest thing ever to literally be able to ask some of these authors how they approach thinking and writing about sexual tension. So that's what we're going to be sharing today and looking at it. This is my first question. How would you define sexual tension? Linda Howard says, awareness. It's an awareness of each other as male and female, awareness of attraction, awareness of sex as an issue between them. Now, this applies also to male on male or female on female. It is that attraction and this sex that, are they going to act on that or not? Angela Knight, who writes erotica, sexual tension is that zing you get when you're with someone you desperately want, but whom you can't have for whatever reason. That's one of the reasons we look specifically at what is the conflict, what's keeping these people apart, because the tension is only as strong as what's keeping them from not acting. So in a historical type novel, many times it was just the time frame and the societal restraints. But the deeper you go into the 12 stages, the harder it is to resist. Christine Feehan said, for me, it is the intimacy, chemistry, and growing awareness building between the hero and the heroine as they begin to know one another. Before, early in the story, before they know each other particularly, it's easier for them to buy into their reasons for staying apart. But deeper into the story, it gets harder and harder. Lori Foster says, in one word, awareness. Characters notice little things about each other. The way the heroine tucks her hair behind one ear, the hero smiles so slow and wicked, how she goes still when he's close, and how he seems to know what she's thinking and feeling, no matter what else is going on in the book. They're aware of each other in a heightened way, emotionally, physically, and mentally. So this is we had no room in this 5 days to go into these details. And some of you asked questions about what about this movement or that movement? Where does that fit in the 12 stages? And it's like anywhere you need it to fit. And that's this awareness. Because there is that, think again, back to high school or something when there was the guy or the gal that was, you were just aware of them. You noticed where they were in a room. You noted, my God, if they came close to you. You noted how they act toward others. All these little observations, that goes into a story too. Jenna Knight said, sexual tension combines awareness with desire, denial, and restraint. The hero and the heroine are aware of each other as sexual creatures, but it doesn't stop there, like it might if an especially hunky man moved in across the street. And while you're aware that he's hot, you're also happily married and have no desire to be with another man. But say if you're recently divorced after your husband left you as your secretary and made matters worse by telling you that you're lousy in bed, then maybe you look at this new hunky neighbor and your hormones goes into overdrive. You're definitely interested. But you've also got baggage, which baggage is the good news because this is a conflict that can hold these people apart until the reader is banging the book on the table saying, get them together. But they got baggage, seemingly solid reasons that prevent you from making a move or expressing interest, despite how badly you want to. So when he comes over to borrow a cup of sugar and stands just a little too close, your heart starts to pound. And when he leaves, but the scent of him, that incredibly rich masculine scent of leather and patchouli lingers, well, you can't stop thinking about him. Wondering, imagining, wanting. This is the essence of sexual tension. It's not about writing sex. It is about that primordial urge that I gotta act on this, but I know better than to act on this. Push and pull. Next question is, how do you build or layer awareness between your hero and heroine? Lori Foster, I like to let the reader know from jump that these two people care more than they realize. For me, the fun is in getting the characters to realize it, to understand that it surpasses the physical. They start getting involved under their own false pretenses, as in, all I'm going to do is work with him on this task and nothing's going to happen. And it takes them a while to realize the depth of their emotions, but those emotions with the physical desire is what makes romance special. Here's from Linda Howard. I take my cue from the characters themselves. They're real people to me. I get inside their heads, their characters, rather than imposing myself on them. I'm not writing about me. I'm writing about them. Now, if you can tattoo this someplace on your arm, do so. Characterization is the most important part of a book. If the reader cares about the character, she'll relate more intensely to what the character feels. But this is what I was mentioning earlier about the fact that on some of the things that the homework I was getting to yesterday, the author was there holding or pushing, or it wasn't the character. We weren't really in their skins, feeling their emotions, feeling their doubts, their fears, their risks from them, not from the author. Here's from Christine Freehand. I use small things, touches, expressions, thoughts, humor, awareness, until the sexual tension is so strong that hopefully the reader is screaming for fulfillment. I want the hero and the heroine, or the hero and the hero, or the heroine and the heroine to grow in the understanding that the sexual excitement and awareness are enhanced by their growing feelings for one another. Short pause here, Kim. I wanted to let you know that we do see your name now, if that's what your test is about. And yes, Paulette, deep point of view, and I pointed that out to several people in their homework, is that they had set up a beautiful possibility and then just kept a little bit of restraint or between letting the character actually feel the yes and what it meant to changing the relationship. The next question I asked was, do you have any specific tips or techniques to make sure one's sexual tension is as strong as it can get? Christine Feehan says, I always tell myself I have plenty of time to slow it down and build with the very small intimacies. Sexual tension and even sex itself in a book is the foreplay. And I don't mean in the sex scene. The leading up to a sex scene is so much more important. And that's that, particularly when we're newer writers, the tendency is to, but I got to rush on to the next thing that's going to happen because I've got lots of great things going to happen. But it's slowing down means you're adding more words to the page in this particular section to let the reader know this is important, this matters. So if you blow through it in 2 or 3 sentences, the reader's going to blow through it. Christine continues, anticipation and the drawing in of your reader is the biggest challenge. And that's what we've all been working with this week. The reader has to care about the hero and heroine. They have to anticipate and want for them to get together. If you're reading in the slightest dialogue or touch or a casual gesture, such as the hero brushing a leaf from the heroine's hair becomes hot, then you've done your job. Jenna Mills says that in order for there to be sexual tension, the attraction or awareness needs to be there first. That's why those first stages matter so much. It's very possible to be attracted to someone sexually, but not have the tension build between the two of you. The tension comes from that combination of attraction, desire, denial, and restraint. And in writing, this can be built in through all sorts of techniques. One easy way is to have the characters say one thing, but to use their internal dialogue to reveal dramatically different thoughts. Now, there was a couple, and I did not even bring this point up, but when they're having just kind of a normal conversation here, we're going to do this, and the other person says, thank you. And then all of a sudden, kissing. The opportunity was missed there to have, if the one character says, yeah, well, I guess we'll see you at work tomorrow, and the other one says, thank you. And yet inside of them, their internal dialogue is saying, stop talking. I want to go cry in the closet, or whatever it is. Paulette points out rooting interest for each character. The hero likes dogs, so he can't be all bad. Those little details that builds the, he's a creep, but on this other hand, dogs are usually smart. Laurie Foster says, think about the scene, visualize it, see it as you would a movie. So you know what the eyes focus on, how the hands move, the beat of a heart, the meter of the breathing. These are all important things. Now, this oftentimes was, people were getting this part, but not this next part. And that next part is simply about what's the emotion. So it's not about, is this something that in a movie we're watching from a distance and the reader is reading for this, the emotion, the response to where that hand is touching, or how that shoulder is brushing, or how one feels the other, particularly for that first time for that couple, or the memory of a previous, things have changed. And so the response is still fresh and new for the character and also the reader. Here's the next question. If there's one piece of advice you could give new authors on how to create sexual tension in their own work, what would it be? Christine Feehan. She says, engage your readers with the small intimacy, the smoldering looks, suppressed passion that is threatening to burst out because he just has to have her. Sexual tension in a book for me is about the emotion. If that isn't there, I'm not engaged enough. So build that emotion. Someone says, that's why we like the book better than the movie. Can't get in the character's head in the movie like you can with the book. Exactly. The movie uses music. The movie is dependent upon the quality of the actors being able to give those small nuances, the doubt as they're checking out the other one, or the hesitation in as they reach for one or let the arm drop. Linda Howard says, don't obsess about sexual tension to the point that you forget other more important things like character development and plot. And yes, she's absolutely spot on here. You can have very heated, steaming want, can't have, want, can't have. But if the plot falls apart, or the character is wooden, no pun intended, it's not going to come across. Sexual tension is more in the mind than anywhere else. The emotions, though, they rest in the body. So really get into your character. She goes on to say, and one of my personal little annoyances is when the male characters don't talk like men, when they're too flowery or too wordy. Listen to men. Pay attention. That's not saying we have to all have alpha heroes. This is saying men tend to talk more directly. They tend to think more directly. They're specific many times in, a woman will say, pick up this over there and don't forget that. And another woman working with her will know exactly what's being discussed. But a man is going to say, pick up the widget over on the chair and don't forget the socket wrench next to it. men just speak that way. Susan Anderson says, I think the biggest mistake any author can make is thinking sexual tension is all about the body parts. He notices her shapely butt, her perky breast. She salivates over his studly abs. People who are attracted to each other do notice those things, but the heroine needs to catch a glimpse of his intelligence or kindness or vulnerability. The hero needs to see the same in the heroine, because readers need to see the protagonist changing their attitude toward one another, thus strengthening the believability of these two people falling in love. That's what the intimacy is about. Sex without any liking generally doesn't play well. Characters can and do have sex before they even like each other, of course, but it's been my observation that for it to hold together, a large step back is usually then taken between the hero and hero, or heroine and heroine, or heroine and heroine, until they build some trust between them. And that's what all these stages are. Because it is the trust that has been removed from a lot of sexual encounters that makes them shallow. Andrea says, one of my beta readers is a man, and his feedback is usually very different from that of the women readers, which has proven invaluable. Absolutely. Because the more that you learn that difference between the sexes, that becomes one more of those small awarenesses of one another. Someone is saying this is a little too fast for me. Are the slides, are we moving them too fast for you? I'm not. I'll make sure I put up the slides longer than, and again, you can always review these in the replay. We're still here with let me double check. I'm off. This is Susan Anderson. H and H means hero and heroine, or hero and hero, or heroine and heroine. It's just a quicker way to say that, and also makes it fit onto the slide easier. So this is Susan Anderson still responding here, that she says, I personally find the give and take of conversation between the hero and heroine sexy. Gotta love that verbal one-upmanship. So again, the one thing you have to be careful with the conversation is it has to have a subtext between them. It's not just two heads talking back and forth, and there's nothing. Here's an example. Earlier in the story, he made a comment about the poor coffee she makes. So the conversation later, when she brings him a cup of coffee, and she might then ask him, is it this quality or that quality? Then play on that, because their relationship has changed. Does he like her coffee now? And then she admits she bought it from someplace. That type of back and forth. Paulette, I've missed one whole day and need review on all videos. Yep. And the videos would be up for 2 weeks, the end of today. So you get that opportunity. Lori Foster says, if it's not a natural part of your voice, if it doesn't come easily to you, and that means not the first draft you ever tried, if it doesn't come after you worked at it and it still feels forced. The kiss feels forced, anything from the kiss on. Write what is natural and what does come easily. In this industry, voice is everything. And you can see that in people's responses to each other's homework, where some people were absolutely loving, and it was great that they gave that feedback. And then I would point out something they may want to take a second look at. Wasn't saying that it wasn't wonderful. It was just be aware of this if you want to have stronger sexual tension. Some was very flowery, some was very fade out. So build up to the kiss and then it becomes almost a non-event. So you have to be true to yourself. Give it a chance, because most people are not comfortable writing intimacy in any way. So if that's the case, find a way to work around it, because there's a lot of these other stages that could be made more powerful, and you never really do have a kiss in the book, or you don't have any of the hand to head, hand to body, hand to mouth to breast, any of that. But you get very, very clear. Usually in those type of stories, they might get as far as the kiss. But make it be true to you and your voice and your characters. Lori goes on to say, you can't force it. You can't follow the market. And trying to do so will only make you miserable in a profession that often takes misery to a new definition. And what this means is that all of a sudden someone comes along and their stuff is hot, 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 hot. And you're trying to emulate that, because that seems that all the editors want that. Let you know that editors and agents don't always know what sexual tension is. All they know is this tension strong enough? But they can't articulate because they're not writers. So you can have, and there are amazing authors. One of the best sexual tension books I ever read was a story about Mary and Joseph on the way to Galilee. Now, not what you expect sexual tension in, but this was the doubts Mary had, and that she felt she'd betrayed Joseph, and Joseph was being remote. And it was brilliant, because it was this young couple that had never had sex. They'd never gotten, I don't even know, past the kiss. And all of a sudden she's telling him that she's pregnant. There's a great book-length conflict. And these two clearly wanted to be a married couple. They were not the sanitized image of, here's Mary, here's Joseph, and here's Jesus, that's God, and everything was okay and fine. No, it wasn't. These two were humans. These two, Mary and Joseph, were a young couple that had everything before them, and then this event tore them apart. And they were trying to work their way back before the baby's born or after the baby's born. So it was a great book. It had no sex. It had lots of sexual tension. This is more of Lori talking about being a writer and trying to follow trends and just finding your place, finding your own voice within that, is that it gives back a lot of pleasure. The career, the total strangers enjoying your work, but the lows can be really low. So prepare yourself and make it as enjoyable as you can. And the title of the book on Mary and Joseph, I think it was called Three to Galilee. And it is an older book, so it may be in the 60s or 70s. Riley likes it. It was Mary and Joseph who started that trope. Yep, blame it on them but this was a refreshing, unexpected. So write what you're dying to write, the way you're dying to write it. I always have, and it's kept me hooked and made the lows and the highs worthwhile. So this is invaluable for writers who, it's a good goal to want stronger sexual tension, but make it true to yourself. So Paula, thank you for being here. It was a pleasure. And I'll see you again, maybe in a course. Now, these were some questions that were asked of me overnight that I wanted to respond to. These don't have to do with the homework. These have to do with the sexual tension 4-week course. So let's talk. I'll answer a couple of these questions, and then I have 1 or 2 other reminders to share here. So, do I need to be at a certain place and a certain time to listen to the lectures like we're doing in this particular challenge? And the answer is no, absolutely not. That every Sunday, new lectures and handouts, etc., will be downloaded. But it comes automatically to you. You don't have to be there. And so you can, at your leisure, but then we will connect once a week in a live Q&A that's all about the Q&A. So will we have time to ask questions about what we're learning? And that is absolutely, because every Saturday a week, so Sunday, the 4th, the lecture for week 1 will be downloaded. On the following Saturday, we'll have a live Q&A, and they can last between 60 to 90 minutes. And both the lecture, all the lecture materials and the Q&A are yours forever, so you don't miss them. What if I have a question before we meet on Saturday, or if I can't attend the Saturday Q&A? And it's any time during the month that you have a question, you post it to the Facebook group, just like we're doing now. And if it can be addressed quickly and easily, I'll do it in the group. But if it needs more clarification, and this often happens when somebody asks, thinking about their specific book, so the question is phrased in a way that applies to a particular story, it can't be answered as a hard and fast rule, so somebody else who reads that answer thinks, oh, Mary says we can't do this, this doesn't work. No, it is for this person, if it's specific about their story, or I know based on some other interest. Also, if late homework, oftentimes I'll take it off the Facebook page and use it in the Q&A, so that I make sure that everybody gets responses. How long will I have access to that course material once it ends? It's yours forever. And if I update down the road, new findings, new examples, whatever, and I would put it into the Facebook group and make sure that you're updated so that you don't miss out on something that has changed. And thank you, Janet, for catching Galilee. Does this forever also include the Q&A sessions or only the course materials? Nope. Within a week following the course, that's Tech Guy, will have compiled all the Q&A sessions into a format that you can access in the classroom. So not in the Q&A. Not in Facebook, so you don't have to go back there. So you'll have everything in one place. Ginger wants to know what time is the Q&A. Usually I have it about this time, 10 a.m. Pacific West Coast time, but I also can have another in the evening so that the people who are coming to it around the world can get to it easier. I think now there's 2 or 3 people from Australia. So I'll have at least one topic that is like 5 or 6 o'clock Pacific time, so that those in Australia will be able to get access to it, to the live one, or those in other parts of the world. Question, will you be giving homework and give feedback like you have this week? Absolutely, I will be giving more homework and more feedback because we'll have a smaller group of people. So it will be easier for me to give that feedback to 30 to 40 people, whereas I can't to give it to 100 people posting a day. It just so that we can go into more details and more examples. But yes, I want a lot more homework. What is the group cap? I try to keep it at around between 35 and 40 max. And that's where I cut it off. And I feel bad cutting it off. But on the other hand, it's so that the people who invest their money, to me, the cost of the course is like going to a regional conference. Only you don't have to pay for the lodging and the food and the wine, whatever else you drink. But the cost of the course is you get more attention. That's, to me, that's a no-brainer. And I want to make sure that you get more homework, but also more feedback. Okay. Is the course geared only to newer writers or only to published writers? And it's geared to both. And it's really nice to have that mix, because if you're a newer person, it's wonderful to have other published writers there, just like we've seen in this course. And it is invaluable. It says here, understanding plotting, but it's not understanding plotting. It's understanding sexual tension. And B.A. said, I used to teach online. I was glad to hear that you limit enrollment. Absolutely, because when I taught this course years ago, there was minimum of 100 people, and I was doing homework for them, and for over a month, and it got to be too much. So it looks like it's Mary saying the homework and your feedback are invaluable. And the most important part to me, you break our own writing down. I've learned so much from that, whether responses to my writing, others' writing, truly invaluable. And that's it to me, is that as a writer, I knew when I walked away from a live presentation, I'd go off to the regional conference or the national conference or whatever, and I'd hear the information, and it was like, oh yeah, I can do that. And I thought I was doing that. But so that's why the learning curve can be longer for writers, is you think you are doing something and you can't see unless you can see it in your own words. You can't see how the word choices can be tripping you up, or the length of the sentences can be tripping you up, or the point of view can be tripping you up, or all the small details that are involved. And so the nice thing about something like this challenge is now you have other people that you might want to hook up with, not in the sexual way, but hook up with in a, I love how you did this. Could I stay in contact afterwards? Yeah, as Erin says, I often see the mistakes in others' writing, but not my own. Absolutely. And there's nothing wrong with making mistakes as long as you're clear that's what's going on. Otherwise, we're submitting our work or we're sending it out in a book, or, in a book, in an indie book published, and it wasn't ready and we don't know. B.A. Davies says that other participants' comments have been invaluable. Absolutely. Because if you get 3 or 4 people saying, I really love it, not only does that feel the warm and fuzzies, because it's like, yes, I get some validation. So that when one other person, usually big mouth me, is the one saying, yes, look at this though. And be aware of that, whatever it is. Riley speaks from experience here. That's why we need editors. But editors come in all shapes and sizes. Some are comma queens or kings, and some focus in on a particular aspect. And some can be too personal in the fact that I didn't like it. Well, that doesn't help us. We need to have other people who tell us why they don't. And that's where beta readers can come in, and where Saren says critique partners, but only if you get critique partners are giving you critiques, not criticism. And for those who have ever had a critique partner that all they did was say, I just don't like this. I really don't like this. I really don't care for this. I don't like that. I don't like this. Or use it as an excuse to tear you down. And many times it's because of their issues, not yours. And Kim says that other readers can contradict each other. So you need to be able to assess the critique from the criticism and see what works. That's right. And I'm really, really, really proud of how so many of the writers who post their work, and people give a lot of feedback, and they say thank you, even though you can almost tell that some of the feedback may not have been spot on. Take the time to say thank you to the person who made the effort to give them what they could give them. And then it leaves it up to the writer to take it or leave it. And here depends on the editor. I copy, edit, and proofread. Amen. I'm so glad that there's people that do that. But I can't always point out when the story needs more or how to get that more. Anyway, so I wanted to let you know that Tech Guy, Queensway, is going to send out that information with actually a link that works this time for those that are interested. And yes, the word challenge only has one L in it. And that had to do with trying to keep it small enough to fit into whatever it needed to fit into. And so you will get an email about this today. And I ask when exactly, but Tech Guy is outside building something. And also mentioned this yesterday, I believe, but I remember that I'll be hosting a 5-day challenge plotting for commercial fiction coming up in October. Again, 1 week. And if you're part of my newsletter, you'll get notification. That's where I give the notification. And that is also where, when I'm coming up to a class, that's where people hear about the discounts. Because I feel like if you are part of my newsletter and are following along with me, that you deserve to be the first one to hear, so you can get the first spots in something that's happening. So we have Riley saying, I have a developmental editor who is invaluable to me. I might have cried when she told me she wouldn't be doing any editing anymore. Well, that was Amy Tan, the author. The one beta reader that she trusted that really helped her, she died. And Amy Tan stopped working for a number of years because she had to build back up to trusting that somebody would have her back and give her valuable feedback, instead of, when you get to that level that Amy Tan had reached very early, some of the professional editors in a publishing house stop editing an author. And so the author has to find that editing by themselves. Erin says, how does that work if you're a pantser? Well, it works in that never, ever, ever try and force yourself to be different than what you are. But for a pantser, we all start out as pantsters. But if you change the type of thing that you're writing, that might have multiple plot lines, might have like a romantic suspense versus just a romance, you're building in the strong external plot line. And so then it becomes more complicated to try and keep all the pieces together and make sure that they're strong. So if you ever, knowing what structure of story is and what it means and how you go about finding it means that you are going to have this tool in your toolbox forever. The other thing that's really nice about understanding story structure, I know plot is a 4-letter word for a lot of writers, but understanding the story structure, it means when you make a pitch to somebody and they ask you a specific question, you know this story is solid. And editors and agents do not have time to teach with each book that this works. So it's a revision tool, listening through, finding out what has to happen where in the story and why. Then you have this revision tool. So when you overwrite, which happens very often if you're a pantser, by several thousand words and that type of thing, then you can use this tool to say, you know what, I didn't enhance this part enough in the story. Let me go back, or this is out of place, or whatever it is. So it's a revision tool. The difference between commercial writing and commercial fiction and literary fiction. Literary fiction has a different plot structure totally than commercial fiction. Commercial fiction, character starts at a particular place, something happens that gives them an opportunity to make changes in their lives that they've drug their feet on or aren't doing, but they go basically off on a journey of sorts. And it's climbing the mountain. They climb a little hill and think that's all they have to do. Then they find out they have to climb a bigger hill, that's all they have to do. Then there's that last push to climb the mountain. And by doing that, they are changed as a character, even incrementally. That there's a difference. They have found love, or they have found that they can trust again, or that risk sometimes is good, that type of thing. Literary fiction, which is not what we're covering, literary fiction is a person starts at a particular point and they've had a coping mechanism based on what happened in the past. They were a survivor, and maybe the only survivor from a terrible wreck. They are a child of incest and have just buried it deeply. Lots of different reasons. And they start at a point in their coping mechanism no longer is holding. Maybe, here's an example. They're a child of incest, and as soon as they could, they got out of the house and they made a life for themselves. And now all of a sudden, their father is in a wheelchair and he needs care. And so the state has said, well, you have a daughter. You're responsible for taking care of this person. Well, talk about breaking this wall that the person had built around what they understood about their relationship with their father. And what happens in a literary story is you go deeper. You go deeper and you go deeper into the issue that has been destroyed. Now, there's no answer at the end of the story. There is, in fact, there's definitely no any hi-fi happy feeling. There is that feeling that now I understand it more. And so that is simply a difference in those. You probably be, and the difference is not determined because I said it, it's determined by the readers. Readers who love literature can't read commercial fiction because it's airplane fodder, or beat reads, or cotton candy. Literary, so it's basically why bother, but commercial fiction readers can't really read a lot of literary fiction because it's life sucks and then you die. So why bother? So the readers are the ones who are determining this. So that is simply so that if you send off a commercial fiction book to a literary agent and they will say, no, thank you. And you won't know why. And it's simply, if you look at the rest of the books that they publish or the rest of their authors they represent, it's not what they say on the page, it's who they represent. And you see that they're all literary authors. They're not going to, very unlikely, going to pick up your book. Janet, why do you classify romance as non-commercial? Oh, I don't. It is commercial. Janet, sorry that was not clear. No, romance is very commercial. What I do, though, is in plotting a romance, you're plotting two people's stories. And you have to constantly be asking your questions about the emotion in the story and understanding it. That's different than if you're plotting a mystery. If you're plotting a sci-fi or a fantasy that has a romantic element, maybe, but not going to be the focus of the story. Anne says, can I share in the newsletter? Absolutely. I'll get you some information as soon as it goes, as soon as Tech Guide has, we have a date, but we don't have when the challenge is going to be exactly. Anne says, I mean, join it. Can you join the newsletter? Absolutely. I'll have Tech Guy. He's also the cook, so that's probably where he's at. I'll just make sure that if you're not in the newsletter, that he'll let you know how to connect to it. And if you do sign up in the newsletter, where is it? It's behind me somewhere. Oops, can't do it. Anyway, you do get a free ebook. You get 3 free ebooks. One is going to be on writing active setting. One will be on quotes that I found helpful in my journey towards publication and being published. So that will be available. And then the third one is just kind of an idea of some of the different templates that are offered. So I'll make sure that he gets you that. Kim, we pansters can go ahead and write our story, and then the development editor lets us know what we missed. And that's wonderful if you have a developmental editor. But if you're trying to send off on your own and you don't have that developmental editor or a good one, then you're basically only as good as that developmental editor is. But if you understand story structure and what can be missing in that, then when you get someone that looks like they were out of middle school and they're telling you, oh, it's not, this doesn't fix, it needs this and it needs that, and it doesn't really, you have no idea. Then you're only as good. So this book might not sound like the last book if you'll have a different developmental editor between. So a pantster is someone who literally writes by the seat of their pants. They want to write the story and allow it to unfold, and they get to find out the story as they're writing the story. Plotters are literally, they want to have a roadmap for what's going on in the story, just enough of a roadmap. They don't need, every page. Some people do. Some people need that, but at least having an understanding of what has to happen before the quarter of the way into the story that sets up everything else in the story, what happens by the midpoint of the story. And so that you're not putting in something, you know, have a tendency to put in a lot of backstory right up front, that type of thing. Riley, I'm a pantster, but I've gotten to the point that I plot a little bit so I know what will be happening in each chapter. But then, of course, the characters drag me off in a different direction. And this is the nice thing, is if you understand the structure, you know that, yes, when the character is dragging you off, it enhances. That's over plotting to me is, I would not recommend it, but there are some people that need 100 pages of plot in order to write a 300-page book. And what happens then is that having an idea why, you have enough of a structure, and it's kind of like building a house. You want to make sure the load-bearing walls are good. You want to make sure that you have a place for a bathroom in your house or whatever it is that you want. It saves you a lot of grief by having a rough idea of a plan of a house than just telling somebody, make this happen, or I'll just wing it and try and put these thingies together. What's this? It's wood, so nail it somewhere. And you end up with a lot of time and a lot of effort put into something that's not going to be a house. Fiona says, I'm a quilter. I visualize lots of disparate scenes, then I try to sew them together. Right, and that is part of a non-plotter approach. And as long as you understand scenes and what they must be, but what happens oftentimes is they sometimes, you can, if you are doing a very intricate quilt, if you're doing a simple patchwork quilt, if you're doing a quilt you've done time and time and time again, you get a feel for what scenes, which parts of the quilt need to be there. But if you are used to quilting in big patches, and then all of a sudden you are doing a very complicated sunshine and shadow Amish pattern or something that you have not done, you like to have a little bit of a hint of what needs to be there. So that is the way with plotting stories. As long as you're doing what you've always done and you know that particular genre and subgenre well, you're usually pretty good. So some people write a sentence or two for each scene, and then I write the story, and oftentimes the characters will drag me kicking and screaming. That's a sign of good characterization. Judith says, it is National Dog Day. Got to have puppies input. And when Riley says a plotter means you have a detailed outline for the story, sometimes that detailed outline could be, and this is what we do in the challenge, we do 5 plot points, 5 things that has to be in a commercial fiction. That's all. And that's all you need for the story, and you run with it. In the 4-week class, we go into more detail about what happens between those 5 points so that you will have a chance to expand. All right, so by Kim, we're moving the boat to another boring. Erin says, we are organic writers. We write by the seat of our pants without much plotting. Pantsters tend to get bored with the story if they plot, or at least I do. The story comes as it comes, mostly through the characters, although I have an idea where the story is going. And that's why all of us start as pantsters. I changed to understanding story structure, understanding plotting, when I started writing stories with more complicated, or you have the internal conflict, you have the external conflict of this character and that character, then you have the external plot line, and you have a strong other third character in the story, and then it gets kind of crazy. And again, don't allow anybody to tell you You have to become a plotter. And this is oftentimes pantsters feel that there is a pressure to conform to a different process. And that's ridiculous. And to me, that's given plotting a bad name, is people who force that you have to do this or that. But if you understand the structure of a story, then you get to make the choices. You don't have to use anything. Some people want a lot of details. Some people want just a hint of it, and that's enough. I like architect versus gardener instead of plotter versus pantster. That's a really nice way of looking at it. Cheryl's a tech guy. I know he has job security here. And then someone says, I want to cook. Tech guy is my cook. Last night was shrimp linguine with a lemon butter sauce. I don't care. I just eat it. But he does all that stuff. So yes, he has real job security. Okay, Lou's heading out. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it, and all the feedback that you've been giving other people. Okay. Oh, Elaine Gray recommended for Janet to be in this class. Elaine is lovely. The writing process can be very individual, but we limit ourselves sometimes, that this is the way I started to write a book, so this is the way I have to approach the book. Me, I wanted to find out every way possible out there, so then I can determine what kind of approach will work with this kind of story, or what, because I had no plans to just write in one genre. All depends on what you're coming from and where you're going. All right. Riley calls herself a plotster now. Yeah, don't tell Homeland Security. Someone asked, with all the classes you give, do you ever have time to write your own stories anymore? Unfortunately not as much, because doing the work for the courses it takes about 2 months to put on a 4-month course. It takes at least 2 to 3 weeks to pull together the information for a challenge, and it usually takes a week after to recover from the challenge. So what happens is time flies by and I'm not getting to other stories. Oh, Zoe from the UK. I'm glad that, and I have no idea why StreamYard kicks you out. It's kind of like Facebook. A couple times this week, Facebook kicked me out from Facebook because I was talking to too many people in the group. So I'm glad, Shoshona, that you have taken part in the others. There's one for body language that comes up. That'll be in the spring. There's one for romance writers that comes up. That's in the spring. The commercial fiction writers, the sexual tension writers. And that's what I'm offering at this time, the big classes. So and the individual who says, I have to start writing, try to put what you teach to practice. I'm not as good as a lot of others here. Trust me, I don't think any of us are, but I will work on it. I have been procrastinating by learning about writing instead of doing it. I need the practice. And that's the only way you ever really figure out, do I get the concepts? And then you do it one concept at a time, like point of view and how to do that, or sexual tension and how to do that, stories, how to do that. Now we get to, and the more you do that, the more that you are a solid writer, not simply just a wannabe writer. So thank you all for being here this week. I just really appreciate it. And I will go back and finish up as much homework as I can until 7 o'clock this evening. The doors will be open so you can give feedback to one another still. And then I hope to see you in a different challenge. And all the best of luck to everyone who gave so much this week to each other and taking the time and commitment to your writing. So even if only somebody got a reminder that they are a writer, or that they're a good writer, or that they know more than they realize, it all makes a difference. So participating in the class, sharing with other writers, giving attaboys to other writers, all of it, it just makes a huge difference. So thank you, each and every one of you. Hillary, I will see you next week. And you're already in, so there should be information in the class for sexual education that's already ready for you to take a look at. So thank you, Anne. Real pleasure to read your writing and also to have you signing in and making such an effort from France. That is marvelous. And lovely, Judith, to work with you again. My God, I think, I won't say how long it's been that we've gone and worked, but sharing your writing just makes it a win. Ginger, I have an email to send out to you, get that out to you today. So for everybody, thank you from the bottom of my heart, and best of luck with your writing. So take care.